she is actually the first Republican member of Congress to use that word genocide. She was using it in response to a fellow Republican congressman, Randy Fine of Florida. He tweeted, "Release the hostages, until then starve away," which has seen him, condemned quite widely. And Marjorie Taylor Greene was among those who actually condemned him. And she said, "It is the most truthful and easiest thing to say that October 7 in Israel was horrific and all hostages must be returned. But so is the genocide, humanitarian crisis, and starvation happening in Gaza." So it is quite unusual that it's coming from her, actually. But I think it reflects a changing attitude in the United States. I mean, Donald Trump himself said yesterday that he was shocked by these images of starvation in Gaza. Randy Fine had said he thought that it was disinformation that was being pumped out by Hamas. He sort of denied that this starvation was happening. But I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is sort of echoing Trump in some ways and saying, actually, we need to do more about this.
Take a trip, quite a few thousand miles away for our regular dose of the Trump dump. What has the occupant of the White House been up to now? Well, of course, he's been in Scotland. We'll digest that and much more with Harriet Alexander, who is a US-based reporter. Harriet, good evening.
Hi, Kate.
Thanks for being with us. Let's just reflect on Scotland then. Donald Trump has now left that fair in Greenland. He, of course, met with the First Minister John Swinney today. A Scottish government source said the two leaders had a very good conversation, which lasted between 15 and 20 minutes on the President's Balmedia estate. Trump, of course, was in Scotland to open his new golf course, where he cut the red ribbon and gave a short speech.
We have a world that's had some conflict, but we've ironed out a lot of it. We're going to have a great and peaceful world, and on a much smaller scale, this will be a tremendously successful place, and a place where people can come and enjoy life, and it's very special. So I hope everybody in Scotland and well beyond Scotland enjoys it for many, many years to come. Let's go. 1, 2, 3.
There we go. Well, look, it was a private visit, but it became abundantly clear that Donald Trump was happy to freewheel with his thoughts. He, of course, met Keir Starmer for a significant amount of time, and John Swinney as well today. What was this trip all about in terms of what you think stateside?
Well, I mean, I think for Trump, it was about his golf courses. It was about his business. Also, it was probably a very nice respite from the continuing pressure over the Epstein files, which is really not going away. I mean, I don't think there was any sort of serious policy plan in place when he went to the UK. It was very much, it was presented as a personal visit, so it wasn't like the White House set out any goals. Of course, yesterday Trump made those statements about Russia, about Ukraine, reducing the timeline for that, and also about Gaza, saying that, that much more needed to be done to resolve the humanitarian crisis. Of course, from the British side, Keir Starmer and John Swinney wanted to talk about tariffs, and they did, but there is nothing concrete yet from those talks, although Trump came away and said that John Swinney was a terrific guy, which is quite the accolade of Trump's vocabulary. So, I think the British leaders will be fairly happy with how that's went.
Yeah, and look, John Swinney will be impressed with that. Before Donald Trump got to his first stop on his trip, he seemed to be a little bit unsure how he felt about John Swinney, or who he was, or if he was definitely meeting him. So I'd say that that's a good impression made by the Scottish First Minister. Swinney's main aim, of course, was to look to try and get some easing of tariffs on Scotch whisky. Did he make any headway with that?
Well, I mean, we don't know so far, but I think he certainly went about it in a pretty savvy way. He gave Trump some quite good presents, a 1921 census for Stornoway, which details Trump's mother's family, who, of course, was born on the Isle of Lewis, and a map of Lewis from 1654. And those are the kind of things that really speak to Trump. I mean, we all saw how he reacted when Keir Starmer handed over the letter from King Charles in the Oval Oval Office. Trump is absolutely all there for those type of gestures. So I think that was quite savvy from Swinney's part. But it was also, as you say, very calculated, because Swinney wants to get this 10% tariff lifted on Scotch, because it's hugely important to his nation's industry. The Scotch industry is losing £4 million a week. And actually, Scotch is a quarter of all UK food and drink exports to the US. So it's really significant. And it does seem that maybe he's made some headway there.
If only he wasn't teetotal, Donald Trump. Let's move on. And we should also note that there was, of course, a significant trade deal in the one announced between the EU and the US on Sunday, a blanket 15% tariff for the EU. I think there's still a bit of debate about who got the better end of that, the EU in not having to pay 25% tariffs, or Donald Trump in still managing to achieve 15%. Let's move on, though, Harriet, if we can. A Republican Congresswoman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I'd like to think is a friend of this station after her comments to Joe Crawford, who works with us here at Times Radio. She's suggested that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. In a post on X, she condemned the ongoing hunger crisis. How much of a shock is it that Taylor Greene's come out and said that? She's a right-wing ally of Donald Trump.
Yeah, she is. And she is actually the first Republican member of Congress to use that word genocide. She was using it in response to a fellow Republican congressman, Randy Fine of Florida. He tweeted, "Release the hostages, until then starve away," which has seen him, condemned quite widely. And Marjorie Taylor Greene was among those who actually condemned him. And she said, "It is the most truthful and easiest thing to say that October 7 in Israel was horrific and all hostages must be returned. But so is the genocide, humanitarian crisis and starvation happening in Gaza." So it is quite unusual that it's coming from her, actually. But I think it reflects a changing attitude in the United States. I mean, Donald Trump himself said yesterday that he was shocked by these images of starvation in Gaza. Randy Fine had said he thought that it was disinformation that was being pumped out by Hamas. He sort of denied that this starvation was happening. But I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is sort of echoing Trump in some ways and saying, actually, we need to do more about this.
Are we going to hear more about this from the Republican Party? We saw this split, didn't we, when we were looking at military action, US involvement in what was happening in Gaza, but also in Europe, in Ukraine as well. A real nervousness and a protectionism, I suppose, of American military members and the American budget from some of the sort of more MAGA-leaning politicians and supporters. Is this is this issue of genocide going to open up another schism?
I mean, it might do it. So that's a really interesting question. I mean, the issue with Iran, of course, it was strongly criticized by many within the MAGA movement. But actually, the fact that it was sort of controlled, it was limited, that Trump really managed to get away with it, just went in and out, and it hasn't spread so far. I think he's managed to sort of quell the fears on that front, because the MAGA hardliners did not want to be involved in another foreign war. On the issue of genocide, of calling it as such, that's, it's a rare step among members of the US Congress to use that word. Marjorie Taylor Greene herself, a couple of years ago, she pushed a motion of censure against Rashida Tlaib. She's the only Palestinian American in Congress. And Tlaib was saying that she was speaking out against what she called the apartheid regime in Israel. And she said that she wanted the blockade of Gaza to end. Marjorie Taylor Greene wanted to censure her for that. And now Taylor Greene is saying that there's a genocide going on. So it does really indicate a shift, I think. And yes, perhaps others may well follow suit.
Look, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate it. US reporter Harriet Alexander. I'm sure we'll speak again soon.